Attorney General Jeff Sessions is rolling back some of the Justice Department's reforms made during the Obama administration, specifically directing prosecutors now to charge suspects with the most serious offense they can prove and reviving guidance on mandatory minimums. In a statement, former Attorney General Eric Holder says the new policy is, quote, dumb on crime. He continued with this. It's an ideologically motivated cookie-cutter approach that has only been proven to generate unfairly long sentences that are often applied indiscriminately and do little to achieve long-term public safety. Joining us now to talk about this, Brian Robertson, Republican strategist and former Assistant Chief of Staff for Georgia's governor, and CNN political commentator Jack Kingston, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign and former Republican congressman from Georgia. Jack, first to you. Good morning to both, but Jack, first to you. Your assessment of what we're hearing from the former Attorney General.
Well, I think this is just part of Trump's campaign promise to crack down on get law and order restored in our country. As you probably know, since the sentencing leniency instructions from Obama came out in 2013, the crime rate has gone up. Violent crime, murder rate has gone up. The highest since 1971, as a matter of fact, 15,000 people killed in 2015, so about an 11% spike in murders. And what he's saying is we need to have prosecutors need to consider the quantity of the drug that they're trying to sell. But he also said there should be some discretion, and I think that's where there needs to be a big discussion of what kind of discretion do you want to give prosecutors. All
right, Brian, how about that point? Last year, the murder rate in the 30 largest cities across the country climbed by 14%. Sessions says that getting tougher on charges will combat that. You say what?
Well, getting tougher on violent charges is great. Here's the problem, but when you have a one-size-fits-all solution where you're putting everybody in jail for longer sentences, you have less room in those prisons for the most violent offenders. In Georgia, we've had significant criminal justice reforms here under a conservative governor and a very conservative legislature that have passed unanimously. Our prison population has gone down over the last 5 years. That's unheard of. It had doubled in the 20 years before that. So we have gone from having 50-something% of our prison population here in Georgia as violent offenders to 67% of our offenders in prison are violent. So we're making more room for the most violent, the most dangerous offenders in Georgia, and taking a smarter approach to nonviolent offenders, particularly those who are suffering from addiction or a mental illness. And we are putting them in accountability courts. We're giving them the treatment they need. That is expensive, but it's much less expensive than a prison bed.
Jack, let's talk about that, the cost, because I went back and read the president's budget blueprint, and let's put it up on the screen. There's a line under the Department of Justice in which they say that their budget, the proposed cuts, achieve a savings of almost $1 billion in federal prison construction spending due to an approximate 14% decrease in the prison population since 2013. Which potentially is what Brian's talking about here. Listen, if you get the most serious charges now, you're going to have longer sentences, fuller prisons. It's going to cost more money. How do you pay for this?
Well, first of all, let me remind everybody that for the 15,000 people who were killed in 2015 and for their families, the cost is probably not the #1 thing on their mind. And I don't mean that sarcastically, but some of these things are hard to put a price on. As Brian knows, during the 1980s in Georgia, we had this awkward court order that was a metric system where we had to release prisons because of overcrowding. Zell Miller, Joe Frank Harris came in with a conservative legislature there and said, you know what, we're going to have a mandatory sentences and 2 strikes and 3 strikes in your outlaws, and it brought down the crime rate, but it did increase the prison population, but you built more prisons. And I think one of the saddest things in there where we got to figure out is what do you do to the actual crime? You know, we debate sentencing, we debate prison populations, but we're not really focusing on how to get the crime rate down. All we're doing is stopping it and making the streets safer, which is important. And that's where the balance has to be.
Brian, let me get one more to you, and then I've got to go. Quickly, what about the argument that this is what the Attorney General took an oath to do, execute and enforce the laws that Congress gave him? If you want to change the laws, pursue a congressional strategy.
I agree with that, and that's what we've done here in Georgia is we changed the law, and we need to take a serious look at that in Congress. One of the people who stopped those reforms from moving forward was former Senator Jeff Sessions, who's now the Attorney General. Look, we know that if you go to prison, you are significantly more likely to recidivate, to come out and commit another crime. If you don't go, if you're diverted and you get the treatment that you need, your chance of committing another crime drops precipitously. We have 4,000 to 5,000 people in Georgia in accountability courts. And those people, when they get out, aren't going to go out and reoffend. Those who go to prison, they will. So a smarter way to keep people safe.
Got to wrap it, Brian. I apologize for that, but we're up against the clock at the top of the hour. Brian Robinson, Jack Kingston, thanks so much.